the kind of different laws and policies that are happening, and companies are not necessarily going for the higher law. And this includes RSPO member companies. So these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves as Malaysian companies and Malaysian stakeholders. What is a higher law where there are such conflicts in our legislation and policies? Also, what are our international obligations to the international conventions that we've signed on to? Because how do we get there? We've not had a national conversation about how we're going to approach these international instruments. Indeed, just like what law takes precedence in regards to workers. There's also the question of power and imbalance. I would say imbalance of power between workers and employers in a plantation economy. That probably comes about because there is as a whole, the industry is very much technical. You're looking for technical solutions, but you're not really focusing on the social capital to empower workers. Because if you look at us here today, we are the stakeholders of the oil palm economy, but where are the workers? Is there any groups here that represent the interests and concerns of workers? I have felt that over 6 years that there has been a big gap in this kind of deliberations every year. There's been great work made in terms of smallholders, but in terms of labor issues, there's been a big gap. And this is just a small reminder, when we're talking about sustainable development, we're talking about the 3 pillars. And when we're talking about people, we're also talking about workers. And what does it mean when you're talking about sustainable development for workers? And it really should be about strengthening the role of workers and unions to be able to participate more effectively in the decision-making settings that affect them. But right now, it's in terms of RSPO, they've not been represented, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this really needs to happen at every level. And when I say every level, I have seen, though, that in some companies, there has been an attempt, a good attempt to start a conversation with the workers in a variety of mechanisms. Just starting a conversation with workers' groups to understand their needs and concerns, both migrant and local. This has happened I've seen this happen in plantation companies, but what hasn't happened is sort of a higher level. Regionally, in a state of Sabah or Sarawak, or just in Malaysia in general, what is happening? We don't hear the voice of the workers. So therefore, I think there's a big gap, and there's a big place that we can start to put the issue on the table. The other thing is, I think we need to support and encourage research in this area, because research provides us with another way of seeing, to unpack sort of the political, the social, the economic conditions of migrant workers as well as local workers. Okay, smallholders and communities. We've also worked with smallholders and communities, and in the Malaysian context, we know that it's a vibrant and diverse situation. And just a couple of pictures to point out. On your left picture is a really mixed sort of agroforestry situation going on, where oil palm is planted in between all the different trees. You can hardly see it there, but I can probably guess when a palm one matures, it's going to be the only crop that's growing on that area. On the right-hand side is a smallholder who's planted on peat soil. You can tell by the color of the stream there. But why he's done that is because he needs to show the state that the land is being used productively and is not being left idle. Not necessarily because he wants to plant oil palm, because it's just the easiest crop to plant. So the variety of systems and models and motivations to plant oil palm it's just very, very diverse. And at issue with oil palm smallholders, again, it's so there's so many things, but we've talked about a lot of this in the previous in the clusters on Monday. So I won't touch on any of those, just that with regards to native land, in Malaysia in particular, when you're talking about indigenous land, this is still a huge question mark. Indigenous people still do not have, a lot of them still do not have secure tenure of their land. And secure tenure is what you need to be able to make it work for you. So in a really quick summary review, what we've seen is that from our own experience and supported by studies is that small-scale agriculture, small holdings, have positive development outcomes for vulnerable communities and smallholders. This is when you're contrasting smallholders with large plantation-type settings where local people are used as a labor force. Okay? And we see that oil palm is really become the runaway crop with smallholders. Everybody wants it. There's not enough seedlings to keep up with demand. But so I can see this being a lot of the smallholders, some of the smallholders that we're working with, they want to plant as much oil palm as possible, as they can, but they're limited by family labor or capital or etc. But they have even professed interest to plant oil palm over their rice fields. And without anything regulating this sector, we can see that it's really going to be the runaway crop. And who's regulating what? The state itself is interested in this expansion. In Sarawak, they're heading for 2 million hectares oil palm. But in terms of local communities as well, we're not sure to what extent the adat or the customary laws are, is having any effect on regulating the expansion of oil palm crop in communities. So we need to think about, okay, the adaptive capacity in terms of natural as well as social systems. What happens to customary identity? What happens to customary livelihoods? What happens to a diversity of agroeconomies that are done by local communities and smallholders? And to what extent is a large expanse of landscape that's been converted to oil palm, and how sustainable is this? Am I the only one in the room thinking, when is enough enough? Because we're talking about shocks potential shocks in the system.
Time's enough.
I will. Okay. So just to put these things on the table, because we've been thinking about this for some time. So I'm just going to leave you with some pictures, and these are people who are affected by oil palm. Kids are going to school because they can't afford to go to school now. But to what cost in terms of customary lives and social systems and etc. So I'm just going to leave you with that. Thank you very much.